Hello, welcome to the channel. Today, get ready for an incredible story that will touch your heart and show how love can transform lives. Meet Jose, a father facing challenges to save his son, until a caramel Labrador named Thor emerges as a true hero in his family. If you enjoy stories of perseverance and heartwarming moments, subscribe to the channel now. Turn on notifications to receive new emotional videos, and let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. Your interaction helps spread inspiring stories like this one. The morning sun filtered through the large windows of my penthouse in downtown Seattle, illuminating the modern design furniture and shelves filled with awards and accolades that gave me status as a businessman. But despite all this shine, a shadow loomed over me. At that moment, as I prepared for an important meeting, my gaze drifted to the terrace. Ethan was there, sitting on one of the benches with a distant look, as if he were observing a world that didn't include him. "Ethan," I called, trying to break the silence that surrounded that space. He turned his head slowly, a shy smile blossoming on his lips. "Are you okay, son?" "I'm just thinking," he replied, his voice laden with a melancholy that cut through my heart. "About how I wish I could play outside, but I know, I interrupted, feeling the weight of responsibility crushing me. "I'll do everything I can to help you feel better, I promise." He merely nodded, but the sparkle in his eyes seemed to have dimmed. What could I do to bring back the joy that once lit up his face? The meeting was scheduled for an hour later. I needed to focus, but the image of Ethan sitting alone on the terrace wouldn't leave my mind. As soon as I entered the office, the room was filled with laughter and animated conversations. My colleagues were all excited, praising my latest achievements. "John, you really exceeded all expectations with that project," one of the directors said, clapping his hands. "We can't wait to see what comes next." "Thank you," I responded, trying to muster a smile, but the joy I should have felt dissolved quickly. "I'm just trying to do my best." "You're doing an incredible job, man," another colleague added. As they spoke, I found myself lost in thought. Ethan's face, his sadness, and the constant struggle to find a solution for his chronic condition weighed more than any professional pressure. The pressure to succeed felt insignificant next to the need to be a father who brought comfort and happiness to my son. When I finally returned home, the atmosphere was heavy. I found Ethan in the same spot, watching a documentary about dogs, and my heart ached at the realization that he was so isolated, even surrounded by his favorite things. "What are you watching, buddy?" I asked, trying to start a conversation. "A documentary about how dogs help people," he replied, his eyes still glued to the screen, but there was a sadness in his voice that I couldn't ignore. "Dogs are really special," I commented, sitting down beside him. "Would you like to have a dog? A friend you could play with?" "Maybe," Ethan murmured, but his tone didn't make it clear if he truly believed that could happen. I felt a knot in my throat, seeing that even in the presence of something that could bring joy, he was still trapped in his solitude. "Ethan, I want you to know that I'm here for you. I will always be," I said, running my hand through his hair. "We'll find a way to make this better together. You don't have to face this alone." He looked at me, and for a brief moment, I saw a glimmer of hope, but it quickly faded, and the sad smile returned to his face. "Thank you, Dad," he replied, but his words didn't carry the brightness I longed to hear. At that moment, I realized I needed to do more, much more, to bring back the joy that had disappeared from our lives. The weight of responsibility was overwhelming, but I couldn't give up. The decision to adopt a dog came as an impulse, almost a cry of desperation echoing within me. That day, I was sitting at the kitchen table, bills and reports spread around me, but my mind couldn't focus. I looked out the window and saw Ethan sitting on the terrace, staring into the void. His distant gaze cut through me like a knife. I had always been a focused businessman, but now, my priority was my son. I needed to do something, anything, to bring him back to life. "Let's go to the animal shelter today," I decided, standing up abruptly. Ethan turned to me, surprised. "Dad, for what?" His voice trembled with curiosity and distrust. "We're going to adopt a dog. I think one of them could be a good friend for you," I replied, trying to contain the anxiety in my voice. Ethan looked at me, a timid expression of hope lighting up his face. "Do you promise we won't return it?" he asked. and I could see the fragility in his question. "I promise, Ethan, we'll find a friend for life," I assured him, trying to give him confidence. Arriving at the shelter, the smell of dogs and the joyful noise of barking greeted us. It was a place full of life, but I felt like mine was slowly fading. Ethan held my hand tightly as we walked through the corridors, observing the dogs in their cages. He seemed nervous, but his eyes sparkled with anticipation. Then I saw Buddy. He was in a small cell, a caramel Labrador with big, expressive eyes, as if he knew exactly what we were looking for. "Look, Ethan, what do you think of that one?" I pointed. "He's beautiful," Ethan whispered, and I could see his heart race. As we got closer, Buddy began wagging his tail, jumping with joy as if he already knew we were there for him. "Do you want to meet him?" I asked, and Ethan nodded eagerly, his eyes sparkling with excitement. When I opened the cell door, Buddy sprang out and ran straight toward Ethan, as if he had found the best friend he'd always wanted. His tail wagged furiously as the dog snuggled against my son's legs. Ethan fell to the ground, laughing, while Buddy enthusiastically licked him. "Look, Dad, he likes me," Ethan exclaimed, his laughter echoing through the shelter and filling my heart with a joy I hadn't felt in a long time. I couldn't stop smiling. In that moment, I realized it was a turning point. The pain and sadness surrounding us could finally begin to fade away. After the adoption, Buddy burst into our lives like a whirlwind. He explored every corner of the house, bringing back joy and activity where silence and sadness had once reigned. Within days, Buddy became the heart of our home. One evening, as I talked about work during dinner, I saw Ethan laughing at something Buddy had done. "Dad, did you see how fast he chased the ball? He's so quick," Ethan exclaimed, and his enthusiasm was contagious. "Yeah, I saw. He's a real athlete," I replied, feeling more connected to my son. The house was filled with sounds again, and I realized Buddy wasn't just a dog. He was a catalyst for happiness, bringing Ethan back to life. Deep down, I knew the love that this caramel Labrador was providing was a light at the end of the tunnel we had been hoping for. That night, as I prepared for bed, I reflected on what had changed. Buddy's presence brought a new energy, a new purpose. I looked at Ethan, sleeping soundly with the dog by his side, and for the first time in a long time, I felt hope. Life could be different. I was starting to understand that the love and connection we were building were perhaps the healing we so desperately needed. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink as I watched Ethan and Buddy playing in the yard. It was a scene I hadn't seen in a long time. Ethan, with his wide, contagious smile, running after the caramel Labrador, who seemed just as happy as he was. Ethan's laughter echoed through the house, and I couldn't help but smile along. Buddy's presence had brought a new energy to our home, and I found myself thinking that perhaps the joy I had been searching for my son was right there in front of us. "Look, Dad, Buddy can catch the ball," Ethan shouted, his voice filled with enthusiasm. He threw the ball, and Buddy ran after it, his paws pounding the ground with contagious joy. I saw the way Ethan's eyes sparkled, and my heart filled with hope. "He's fast, isn't he?" I replied, moving closer to the yard. I sat on the grass, watching the scene unfold. Buddy returned with the ball, tongue hanging out, panting heavily but still excited. Ethan clapped, and the Labrador came over, wagging his tail. "One more time, Buddy," Ethan shouted, his voice full of life. He threw the ball again, and the Labrador raced after it, as if the entire world existed solely for that game. The sadness that had once loomed over our home seemed to have evaporated, replaced by laughter and joy. At dinner, the atmosphere was light. I prepared a simple meal, but the real feast was in the conversation. "Ethan, how was playing with Buddy today?" I asked while setting the food on the table. "It was amazing, Dad. He's the best dog in the world. Did you see how he runs?" Ethan replied, his eyes shining. "I never thought a dog could do that." "That's true. He's very special," I said, smiling. "You know, Buddy seems to have incredible energy. How do you feel when you play with him?" "I feel happy. It's like nothing else matters. Just us three," he said, and his words touched me deeply. The bond they were forming was something I had never predicted, and the importance of listening to my son, understanding his emotions, was becoming clearer to me. "You know, Ethan," I started hesitantly, "sometimes I worry too much about work and everything that's going on." But seeing you happy like this makes me realize that the most important thing is our family and being present. Ethan looked at me, his smile fading a bit, but there was still a spark in his eyes. I like it when you're here, Dad. It's nice when you're not thinking about other things. I'll try to do that more. You and Buddy are my priority, I affirmed. The simple act of sharing my feelings seemed to bring us even closer together. After dinner, as Ethan was getting ready for bed, I went to his room. He was lying on the bed, and Buddy had settled at his feet, as if keeping watch. Dad, do you think Buddy will stay here forever? Ethan asked, a hint of worry in his voice. I hope so, son. He's part of our family now, I replied, petting Buddy's head. And we'll take care of him, just like he takes care of us. I love you, Dad, Ethan said, closing his eyes. I love you too, my champ, I murmured, feeling a wave of gratitude. I looked at Buddy, who was gazing at me with those eyes full of love and loyalty. His presence was becoming a cornerstone in our lives, and Ethan's joy made me rethink what truly mattered. Professional success was a goal, but my son's happiness and the love we shared were the real treasures. As the sun began to set over Seattle, I found myself lost in thought. The weight of responsibility was almost unbearable. With each passing day, I felt more distant from my son Ethan and more trapped by the demands of my job. Yet a new spark of hope was about to enter our lives. Sarah, my wife, had become involved in a community project for children with chronic illnesses. She had always had a generous heart, and her dedication inspired me to rethink what truly mattered. John, you need to come to the event this week, Sarah said one day while preparing dinner. I looked at her with a skeptical expression. What does that have to do with me? I'm so swamped with work. It has everything to do with you, with us, and with Ethan. These children need support, and you need a space to open your heart, she replied, placing her hand over mine. There was something in her eyes that made me hesitate. Come with me. I know you'll feel good seeing how we can help. I had to admit that the idea of helping other children appealed to me. In recent months, I had been so focused on finding a cure for Ethan that I had forgotten the power of community and mutual support. On the day of the event, the atmosphere was vibrant. Children were running, laughing, and sharing stories while the parents exchanged experiences and supported one another. As I entered the room, I was greeted by a group of parents who were animatedly discussing the challenges they faced. It was a relief to hear that we were not alone in this journey. John, you're here. That's great, said a mother I recognized from a few previous meetings. You have no idea how much your presence means to all of us. It's good to be here, I replied, feeling the weight on my shoulders lift a little. Sarah was at the center of the room, sharing her passion for the project. We have to come together. Hope is contagious, and together we can make a difference in these children's lives, she said fervently, looking into the eyes of those present. I watched her, feeling a swell of pride within me. She had a unique ability to inspire people, and that night, I realized I wanted to be part of that change too. When she finished speaking, many parents approached to talk and share their stories. John, would you like to join us in some activities? We need more hands, one of the parents asked. I hesitated, but the idea of helping, of being present, began to resonate in my heart. Sure, I'd love to, I responded, feeling a wave of determination. What I wanted most was for Ethan to have a future filled with possibilities, and perhaps that started with small actions. That night, on the way home, the atmosphere felt light. Ethan was sitting at the table with Buddy by his side, and his smile made me feel like maybe everything was falling into place. How was the event, Dad? He asked, curiosity shining in his eyes. It was amazing, son. I met several people who are going through similar situations. We're all in this together, I said, trying to convey the hope I had found. That's cool. And you can help those kids, right? He asked excitedly. Yes, and I want you to join me. We can do this together, I suggested, and Ethan's face lit up. I'd love to help. Can we bring Buddy? He asked, looking at the Labrador lying beside us. Of course, Buddy will be a great therapist for all of them, I laughed, realizing that family unity could be a powerful force in our fight for Ethan's health and happiness. In that moment, looking at my son and the dog who had become part of our family, I knew we were starting a new chapter. And with that, a new hope was reborn in our hearts. It was a sunny day, perfect for a walk. Discovery Park, with its trails and stunning views, seemed like the ideal place for us. Buddy, our caramel lab, was restless, bouncing ahead while Ethan followed, laughing and playing with the leash. I couldn't remember the last time I heard my son laugh like that. His happiness was contagious, and for a few moments, I managed to forget the pressure of being a successful businessman and a father to a sick child. "Look, Dad," Ethan shouted, pointing at a group of ducks swimming peacefully in a pond. "Can we feed them?" "Sure, but just a little bit, or they'll get too fat," I joked, grabbing a bag of feed we always brought along. While he had fun tossing bits of bread, Buddy seemed more interested in exploring the surroundings. "Buddy, come here, look what we have," I called, and immediately the lab turned, his ears flopping as he ran toward us. But suddenly, the calm was shattered by a scream. A child, perhaps 5 or 6 years old, was about to cross the street without looking. Before I could react, Buddy, with an almost supernatural instinct, bolted toward the child. "Buddy, no," I shouted, but he was already in motion. The scene unfolded in slow motion. Buddy ran with all his might, his paws pounding the ground while the child, distracted, was about to be hit by an oncoming car speeding toward us. My heart raced, and for a second everything seemed silent. Then came the impact. Buddy shoved the child aside, and the car sped past, but not without striking the Labrador. "Buddy!" Ethan screamed, his eyes wide with terror. I rushed toward my son and the dog. What I saw left me speechless. Buddy was lying on the ground, panting and injured, but still trying to rise. "He's going to be okay, Ethan. I promise," I said, even though uncertainty gnawed at my heart. The car came to a stop, and the driver, pale, hurriedly stepped out. "I'm so sorry, I didn't see," he exclaimed. But his words were just a distant echo in my mind. "We need to call a vet," I said, carefully cradling Buddy in my arms. He felt so heavy, but I didn't care. What mattered was that he was alive. "We're going to take care of you, Buddy," I said, my voice thick with emotion, while Ethan cried beside me. "Please, don't let him go," Ethan pleaded, tears streaming down his face. "He's my friend, Dad." "I know, son. He's our friend, and we're going to do everything we can," I assured him, trying to convey some sense of security. Adrenaline surged through my veins as I drove at high speed to the veterinary hospital. Ethan's desperate expression cut me to the core. When we arrived, we rushed into the hospital. The veterinarian, a woman with gray hair and a worried expression, came quickly. "What happened?" she asked as I placed Buddy on the examination table. "He was hit by a car, but he saved a child," I said, my voice trembling. "Please, do something." "We'll do our best," she replied, starting to examine Buddy. I looked at Ethan, who had buried his face in his hands, sobbing. My heart broke at the sight of my son so distressed. I knelt beside him and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Ethan, Buddy is a hero. He saved that child, and now we're going to take care of him. He's strong, just like you," I said, trying to calm him, but my words felt hollow in the face of our pain. "And what if he doesn't make it, Dad? I don't know what I'll do." The fragility in Ethan's voice left me feeling unmoored. "He means everything to me." "I know, son." "He means everything to us," I said, feeling a wave of helplessness wash over me. "But we have to believe that he'll be okay. Buddy needs us now, and we need to be strong for him." And so, in that veterinary hospital, as the hours dragged on, the only thing I could do was hold Ethan's hand and hope that our hero, our Labrador, would come back home. The smell of the veterinary hospital was a mix of disinfectant and a faint whiff of dog food. I felt lost among those white walls that seemed to close in around me. Glancing over, I saw Ethan sitting in a chair, his eyes red from crying. He clutched Buddy's leash as if, somehow, it could bring our Labrador back to us. My heart ached. "Dad, what's going to happen to Buddy?" Ethan's voice was barely a whisper, almost inaudible. But the desperation was clear. I knelt beside him and put my hand on his shoulder. "I don't know, son, but we're here with him. That's what matters right now." I tried to convey hope, but the truth was my own hope was crumbling. I stared at the door to the exam room, waiting for the veterinarian to come out with news, good or bad. Each second felt like an eternity. The bond Buddy had formed with Ethan and me was undeniable. He wasn't just a dog. He had become part of our family, a symbol of joy amidst chaos. "He's going to be okay, right?" Ethan asked, his voice choked with emotion. "Yes, I believe so. Buddy is strong. And he knows we need him," I replied, trying to hold back the tears that threatened to spill. What I really wanted was to shout that everything would be fine, that Buddy would soon be running around the yard again. But the uncertainty weighed on me like an anchor in my chest. We sat in silence, only listening to the sounds of the hospital, the beeping of machines, the distant murmur of others, and a dog barking somewhere in the background. That atmosphere was suffocating, and the anguish felt like a shadow that followed us. After what felt like an eternity, the door opened, and the veterinarian appeared. He had a serious expression, but not completely grim. "Sir Ethan, I'd like to talk to you about Buddy." Ethan's heart raced, and I felt my breath catch. "Is he going to be okay, doctor?" I asked, barely able to control the vulnerability in my voice. "Buddy suffered severe injuries, but we're doing everything we can. He's stable now, but he will need surgery to repair the damage," the veterinarian explained, looking into Ethan's eyes. "If all goes well, he has a good chance of recovery. But the process will be long and will require care." Ethan looked at me, his gaze filled with hope and fear. "He's going to come back and play with us, right, Dad? He'll be with us again." That question tore me in two. I wanted to answer with absolute certainty, but the truth was there were no guarantees. "Yes, son, let's hope he recovers soon. We'll be by his side every step of the way." The veterinarian gave us more information about what to expect during recovery and how to care for Buddy once he came home. I listened to everything, but most of the conversation sounded like a distant echo. My focus was on Ethan, who was looking down, struggling against the tears that threatened to fall. "I don't want to lose Buddy," he whispered, the pain in his voice palpable. "He's my friend." "I know, my love. And we're going to fight for him, just like he fought for us," I said, trying to infuse a dose of courage into my words. "We'll do whatever it takes to bring him back." The determination I tried to convey wasn't just for Ethan, but for myself as well. Buddy had become a symbol of hope in our lives. We needed him. And I knew that, no matter what happened, we would do our best to show him just how much he was loved. And so, there, between uncertainty and hope, we both stood together, ready to face whatever came our way. The morning was sunny, and I felt that life had taken on a new meaning since Buddy entered our lives. The energy in the house was palpable, and Ethan's laughter now echoed in every corner. The dog, with his contagious joy, had transformed the atmosphere of our home. As I prepared breakfast, I heard Ethan calling Buddy with enthusiasm. "Buddy! Let's play in the yard," he shouted, his voice full of excitement. It was a melody I hadn't heard in so long. I placed my coffee mug on the table and walked over to the door. The scene I witnessed filled my heart with joy. Ethan was running across the lawn with Buddy right behind him, his paws pounding on the ground as he tried to catch up. The sparkle in my son's eyes was a sight I wished to hold on to forever. "Look, Dad. Look what I taught Buddy to do," Ethan exclaimed as he picked up a tennis ball and threw it for the dog. Buddy, with a graceful leap, caught the ball in midair, making Ethan laugh even harder. "He's the best dog in the world," Ethan shouted, and I couldn't help but smile. His happiness spread like a ray of sunshine, warming my heart. "You're right, Ethan. Buddy is amazing," I replied, sitting down in a chair on the porch and watching the scene unfold. As they played, I couldn't help but think about how Buddy's presence had brought back the light in my son's life. The weeks of sadness and loneliness seemed so distant now. After a while, Ethan ran over, breathless, with flushed cheeks. "Dad, did you see how fast Buddy is? He could be a champion." He was so excited he was nearly bouncing with joy. "Can I take him to the park today, please?" "Of course, champ. We'll go to the park later." "How about we bring some treats for Buddy?" I asked, trying to keep up with his enthusiasm. "Yes, he loves biscuits," Ethan replied, darting back inside to grab the bag of treats we had bought at the pet store. I couldn't help but feel grateful for having found Buddy. The dog was not just a pet. He was a friend, a companion, and, in a way, a therapist for Ethan. As the morning wore on and we got ready to leave, Ethan's excitement was contagious. "Dad, do you think Buddy will make new friends at the park?" he asked, putting the leash on the dog, his eyes shining with anticipation. Absolutely. Ethan, Buddy is very sociable. He'll make friends in no time, I said as I got dressed. My son's happiness was like a balm for my soul. I didn't want this joy to be interrupted. We arrived at the park, where we could already see other children playing with their dogs. Ethan let Buddy loose, and the lab ran toward a group of kids playing frisbee. The dog quickly joined the fun, and I watched as Ethan laughed and enjoyed himself, interacting with other parents and children. It was a perfect moment, and I allowed myself to forget, even if just for an instant, the worries that still weighed on my heart. "Look, Dad, Buddy is playing frisbee," Ethan shouted, jumping with joy. I moved closer and saw the dog, in a display of pure happiness, leaping and catching the frisbee that a girl had thrown. "He's fast, isn't he? He looks like an athlete," I commented, and Ethan nodded with a wide smile. "He's the best dog ever," he repeated, and I realized that on that afternoon, the bond between father, son, and dog was growing stronger with each moment. That simple outing to the park became a symbol of hope. Life was tough, but with Buddy by our side, I was certain we could face the challenges still to come. I remember that day as if it were yesterday. The sun was starting to set, casting a golden light over the garden that now seemed more alive than ever. Buddy was running in circles, his paws thumping on the ground as Ethan laughed like I hadn't seen him do in months. My son's happiness was contagious, and I couldn't help but smile as I watched him so carefree and untroubled. "Look, Dad, Buddy is a real athlete," Ethan shouted as the lab jumped and tried to catch the ball I had thrown a little further away. I moved closer, sitting on the garden bench, watching the scene with a heart full of gratitude. That dog had changed everything for us, bringing a light that seemed to have been extinguished for so long. "Do you think he'll catch the ball this time?" I asked, a mischievous smile on my face. Ethan paused for a moment, thoughtful. "I think he will, Dad. He just needs a little more practice. He always had a way of seeing the world that surprised me. And if he doesn't catch it, that's okay. The important thing is that he's having fun." Those words resonated deeply within me. I knew that life had its ups and downs, and that happiness often didn't depend on grand achievements, but on simple moments like that. As I watched Buddy trying his best, a sense of peace began to fill my being. "You know, Ethan," I said, as I petted Buddy's head as he came over for some affection, "I'm so happy you found a friend like Buddy. He's special." "He's the best, Dad," Ethan replied, a sparkle in his eyes. "I feel like he understands everything I'm going through. Sometimes, when I'm sad, just looking at him makes me feel better." At that moment, I realized there was more than just a bond between my son and the dog. There was a deep connection that united them in a way that I, as an adult, often forgot. Buddy wasn't just a pet. He was a true companion, someone who offered comfort and joy without expecting anything in return. The sky began to darken, and the stars started to twinkle, one by one. "Let's go inside, Ethan. It's getting late, and tomorrow we have a full day of adventures," I said, lifting him up and reaching out for him. "But I want to stay out here a little longer with Buddy," he protested, looking at the dog, who seemed just as exhausted as he was happy. "How about we make a deal?" I suggested. "Let's go inside and prepare a snack. After that, we can come back out here and take Buddy for one last walk. That way, he can rest a bit too." Ethan's eyes lit up. "That's a great idea, Dad. He'll love it." We went inside together, and as I prepared a simple snack, Ethan excitedly talked about how Buddy would be a great athlete if he participated in the Dog Olympics. "He could win a gold medal, Dad, and I'd be his coach." "I'd love to see that," I laughed, remembering how his imagination had no limits. "You know, in reality, you're already a great coach for him." "That's true. Look how much he's improved since he came here," Ethan said, with evident pride in his voice. As we prepared the snack, I felt a wave of hope and love wash over my heart. Life wasn't perfect, but in that moment, I knew we were on the right path. Ethan's laughter and Buddy's love were constant reminders that even in adversity, happiness could be found in the simplest things. "Come on, Buddy, time for our evening walk," I called as the three of us stepped out of the house. The glow of the stars seemed to reflect the light that had ignited within us. Morning light filtered through the windows of our home, creating a pattern of dancing shadows on the living room floor. I was sitting at the breakfast table. The routine felt so familiar, yet there was something different in the air. Buddy, our caramel lab, was lying at Ethan's feet, who, with a wide smile, was trying to feed the dog pieces of bread. "Look, Buddy. This is the best bread in the world," Ethan exclaimed, his voice carrying a joy I hadn't seen in months. "Really, son, you should open a bakery just for him," I joked, trying to keep the mood light, but my heart still felt heavy. I looked at Ethan's face and saw the sparkle in his eyes. He was so engaged with Buddy that he seemed to have forgotten, even if just for a moment, about his worries. "Do you think Buddy likes it? Or does he prefer kibble?" Ethan asked, frowning as if he were pondering a great dilemma. "I think he loves everything you give him, as long as it comes with love," I replied, watching him. It was incredible how a simple dog could bring so much happiness. But on the other hand, concerns about Ethan's health still weighed on my mind. I wanted that moment of joy to last forever. After breakfast, I decided to take Ethan and Buddy for a walk in the park. Discovery Park had always been a special place for us, and now with Buddy it felt perfect. When we arrived, the sun was shining brightly, and the air felt fresh. Ethan ran ahead, laughing and calling Buddy to follow him. "Come on, Buddy. What are you waiting for?" he shouted, and the lab, with his contagious energy, dashed after him. As I walked, I couldn't help but feel a mix of gratitude and worry. Ethan looked so happy, but the uncertainties about his health still haunted me. I knew I needed to be strong for him, but there were moments when the burden felt almost unbearable. "Dad," Ethan called, interrupting my thoughts. "Look, Buddy found a giant stick." I turned and saw Buddy, with what looked like a log in his mouth, wagging his tail joyfully. The scene was so simple, but Ethan's laughter echoed like music in my ears. I approached and said, "That's the most impressive stick I've ever seen. Buddy is a true champion." With every word, I tried to convince myself that his happiness was a sign that everything would be okay. Ethan and Buddy started to run around the park, and at that moment, I saw the son I hadn't seen in so long. He was free, light, and I wished that this freedom was real and lasting. I sat down on a bench, watching them. The scene was so pure that I almost forgot about my worries. "Dad, come play," Ethan shouted as he ran toward me, pulling Buddy by the leash. "Let's play ball." That was a perfect opportunity for me to join them and step away from my dark thoughts. I got up and grabbed the ball I had brought. "All right, team, get ready for the biggest soccer match ever to take place at Discovery Park," I said, trying to mimic a sports commentator. Ethan laughed, and with the contagious enthusiasm of a child, he ran toward the field. I threw the ball, and Buddy, with his natural instinct, bolted after it. Ethan's laughter mixed with the sound of the dog's paws pounding on the grass, and for a few moments, my worries faded away. "Go, Buddy, you can do it," Ethan cheered, and I couldn't help but smile. The love we felt for that dog was palpable, and in that moment, I realized that no matter the challenges we still had to face, we had something real and strong that united us. The day passed quickly, and as we walked back home, I felt a lightness in my heart. Ethan's laughter and Buddy's energy had brought a new meaning to our lives. Even though the challenges hadn't disappeared, the hope that blossomed inside me was undeniable. And as I looked at my son and his loyal friend, I realized that together we were stronger. Life seemed to have taken an unexpected turn since Buddy came into our home. I used to think that work, meetings, and business achievements were what truly mattered. However, looking at Ethan and seeing his smile after the arrival of our caramel Labrador made me realize that there was something much more precious at stake. That morning, even with Seattle's typical gray sky, I felt a lightness in my heart. The house was filled with barks and running around the yard, and I couldn't stop smiling. It was then that I decided it would be a special day for us. "Ethan, how about we have a picnic in the park?" I asked, watching Buddy roll in the grass, almost as if he were dancing. "Picnic," Ethan repeated, his eyes sparkling with the idea. "We can bring sandwiches and some cookies, and Buddy can run around as much as he wants." He was practically bouncing with excitement. The mere mention of the word picnic seemed to ignite a spark of enthusiasm I hadn't seen in a long time. "Of course, I'll prepare everything. Let's make a delicious lunch." I turned to the kitchen and began gathering the ingredients. As I sliced the bread and veggies, I thought about how my life had changed. Work was still important, But now there was a greater purpose: Ethan's happiness and well-being. Once everything was ready, the three of us, me, Ethan, and Buddy, headed to Discovery Park. The fresh air and the sight of green fields filled us with excitement. Buddy was restless, tugging at the leash, eager to explore. "Calm down, Buddy, we'll get there," I laughed, trying to contain the Labrador's enthusiasm. When we arrived at the park, I threw a ball for Buddy and watched as he sprinted after it, his energy contagious. "Look, Dad, Buddy is a real athlete," Ethan exclaimed, laughing loudly. The sound of my son's laughter was music to my ears. My problems felt distant, almost unreal. After a while, we spread out a blanket on the ground and began to snack. "These sandwiches are great, Dad. You're a real chef," Ethan said, taking a bite of his lunch. "But nothing compares to Buddy, right?" He looked at the dog, who was sitting beside us, eyes bright, waiting for a piece of food. "That's true. Buddy is the best companion we could have," I replied, giving the Labrador a pat on the head. "And, Ethan, you know Buddy needs you too, right? The love and friendship you share are incredible." "Yes, I know. He makes me feel better when I'm sad," Ethan said, and suddenly, a shadow crossed his face. "But what if something happens to him?" "I don't know what to do, Dad." His voice trembled, and I realized that the concern for Buddy's health had surfaced, a worry I also carried in my heart. I felt a tightness in my chest. "Look, son, we all face challenges. The important thing is that we're together. Buddy is strong, and we're going to take care of him just like he takes care of us." I wished those words would be enough to comfort him, but uncertainty always seemed to linger over us. In that moment, Buddy approached and nudged my hand with his nose, as if he understood our conversation. "He's a hero, Ethan. Whenever you're sad, remember that Buddy is here to help you." As I said this, I realized it wasn't just Buddy who brought joy, but also the strength of our united family. After the picnic, we decided to take a stroll around the park. We walked side by side, and I felt we were more connected than ever. "Dad, do you think one day I'll be able to help other kids like Buddy helps me?" Ethan asked, looking at me with hope. "I'm sure of it, Ethan. You're strong and kind. One day you'll do amazing things." And as we spoke, I looked at Buddy running ahead of us, and I knew that no matter the challenges we would face, the light he brought into our lives would never fade. What moment touched your heart the most in this emotional story? Was it Thor's sacrifice to save a child, or Jose's transformation as a father? We really want to hear your thoughts. Leave your comment below and share your reflections with us. Sharing this story can inspire many others, so send it to someone who needs a bit of hope. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to keep up with more heartwarming stories. If this story moved you as well, give it a like and join this community that believes in the power of love and resilience. Until the next touching story.